Good morning, everyone. It's such an honor to be here with you today. My name is Fauzia Morgan. I am a certified nutrition consultant. And today we are going to talk about how we can optimize our nutrition and our lifestyle for Parkinson's disease. So we're going to go over 4 main concepts today. And by the way, I made brochures for all of you with all of the content from my presentation, so don't feel like you need to write anything down or take any photos of the slides right now, because I'm going to make it all available to you. So first of all, your gut is your second brain. Chronic inflammation leads to disease. The ketogenic diet has been shown to improve Parkinson's symptoms. And intermittent fasting supercharges the brain. So here's some food for thought. Your gut is your second brain. And how exactly does that work? So there is a link, and you can see it on this image right here, between the central nervous system, which is our brain and our spinal cord, and the enteric nervous system that lies within our gastrointestinal tract in our gut. So along this axis, there are hundreds of millions of neurons that are connecting our brain to the nervous system that controls our gut. So essentially, our gut and our brain are constantly communicating, and there's communication going between them in both directions. And a really important part of the gut-brain axis is the gut microbiome. What is the gut microbiome? It's a complex ecosystem, a big community of bacteria, viruses, fungi, and other microorganisms that reside within the gut. This is also known as our gut flora. And the gut microbiome has a lot of really important jobs. It digests our food, first of all. It manufactures certain vitamins, certain hormones. It also manufactures serotonin and dopamine. It regulates our blood sugar. It regulates our blood cholesterol. It also regulates our immune system. So how are the microbiome and Parkinson's related? Well, we now know that it all starts in the gut. Our gut health is a big indicator of our neurological health. And specifically in Parkinson's, they have found higher levels of inflammatory bacteria, lower levels of the good anti-inflammatory bacteria. Parkinson's patients tend to have higher occurrences of SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, along with H. pylori, which is another gut infection that causes ulcers. And there's also leaky gut. And you may have heard of leaky gut, but what exactly is that? Well, the membranes of your gut are quite tight-knit, and they're supposed to filter out bacteria, harmful toxins, undigested food, so that it just passes through your system. But when you have leaky gut, your intestinal membranes get little holes in them. And what happens is all of those harmful things actually pass through into your bloodstream. And we don't want this because it causes this immune response by the body. And an immune response is going to create inflammation. And then we also know that chronic constipation is an early sign of Parkinson's. And we know that it is a huge symptom, an ongoing thing in Parkinson's. And one more thing I want to talk about. This is a really interesting link. As I mentioned before, serotonin, our happy hormone, one of our neurotransmitters, it's manufactured in the gut. What you might not know is that 90% of the serotonin in our bodies is actually manufactured not by the brain, but by the gut. So you can imagine if we have an imbalanced, unhealthy gut microbiome, if our gut flora is off, we may not be producing serotonin in an optimal way. And low serotonin is linked to depression, anxiety. We need good serotonin for good cognitive function, And what you might not know, and is so interesting, is that serotonin plays a big role in gut motility. So if you don't have adequate serotonin, you're going to be constipated. So I just find this to be a really exciting and interesting link. So now that we know about the role that the microbiome plays, how can we improve our microbiome? And this is not just for people with neurological disorders. This is for all of us, because our gut really is a huge indicator of our health. Health starts in the gut. So first of all, we want to stop killing our microbiome. We need to remove pesticides. We want to eliminate antibiotics as much as possible. Obviously, they are life-saving drugs, but we want to be careful. NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, also harm the microbiome. Junk foods, processed foods, the standard American diet, all of these things harm the microbiome. We want to heal gut inflammation. So those infections I mentioned before, the H. pylori, the SIBO, these things create inflammation in the gut. We can test for them. We can also test for leaky gut. We can address these things and we can heal them. Another thing to consider is gluten intolerance. Gluten intolerance, it might seem trendy, but it's a real thing. A lot of people are gluten intolerant, and it's not just because of the gluten, it's also because of the way that wheat is treated and processed in America. So gluten intolerance is definitely something to consider testing for. And once we take out the offenders, we want to nourish our gut. We want to nourish it with whole foods. And when I say whole foods, what I mean is food that is as close to its natural form as possible, okay? So a really classic example is brown rice, which is a whole food, versus white rice, which we all love. It's very delicious. We especially love it here in Hawaii. But it's not, it has no nutritional value. Everything's been stripped of it. So it's okay once in a while, but go for brown rice instead. And when I talk about a whole foods diet, I also am talking about a nutrient-dense diet, getting the most out of what you eat. So again, if you're gonna have some rice, have some brown rice, because it has way more nutrients than white rice. And then we wanna go for a diverse diet. And this is really interesting. Think about it. The more diverse your diet is, the more diverse your gut microbiome will be. If you're eating a small set of foods, can you still hear me? You're gonna have a small set of gut bacteria. But if you broaden your foods, especially vegetables, you're going to broaden your microbiome because all of the gut bacteria feeds off of the foods that you eat. So that takes us to number 4, which is how do we repopulate the microbiome? We diversify our diets. We eat the rainbow of vegetables. We can also eat fermented foods and drinks. So sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, organic plain yogurt. All of these foods, which are fermented, not pickled, but fermented, they contain live active cultures that, first of all, I think these foods are delicious. They are also going to benefit our microbiome. And just one thing about fermented versus pickled. Pickled foods contain vinegar. Vinegar kills bacteria. So make sure that when you're shopping for fermented vegetables, make sure that it says that it's fermented, and then read your labels and make sure that there's no vinegar in there as a preservative. So more food for thought. Chronic inflammation leads to disease. We have so many inflammatory factors in our society today. We've got junk food. We've got conventional produce, meat and dairy, so meaning produce that has been sprayed with pesticides, meat and dairy that have been treated with antibiotics. We have blood sugar dysregulation, and this is a really important topic. This is something that's very near and dear to my heart as a nutritionist. It's so important that we keep our blood sugar balanced. And the reason why is because when you have blood sugar that's all over the place, say you're really hungry and you just need some quick energy and you're super cranky, you're hangry, you need something, you have some sugar. So you could have some cookies or a pastry or something like that, and you couple that with some coffee or some chocolate, your blood sugar is gonna spike and you're gonna feel real good. But then there's nothing to sustain it. There's no protein, there's no healthy fat, there's no fiber, and so what happens is your blood sugar just plummets, and then what happens? You are cranky, you are tired, you're fatigued, you have cravings, you get hangry again, or you just get sad, you just have no energy. So what we want is to make sure that we're having balanced meals, and when we have snacks, we make sure that we're having protein with our snacks. And in a little bit, I'm gonna show you a really easy way to make sure that you're getting balanced meals to keep your blood sugar balanced. And so when you eat, you'll have fiber, you'll have protein, you'll have healthy fats, and all of these things help to create this steady stream of blood sugar for you, so that instead of going like this throughout the day, you're like this, and you're calm, you have energy, and you have a stable mood. Lack of sleep is another huge inflammatory factor. Most people don't get enough sleep these days. If they do get enough sleep, they're not getting high quality sleep. When we sleep, that's our body's chance to repair itself. But if we're not getting enough sleep, our bodies don't get that chance. And so it's just constantly trying to work to repair everything during the day when it's got to be doing other things. And then again, an imbalanced gut microbiome. If you have stuff going on in your gut, you have inflammation in your gut, then what happens is that creates an immune response in the body that will create inflammation, and eventually will create inflammation in the brain. So we know that brain inflammation is linked to Parkinson's, but we can lower inflammation, we can improve our brain function through targeted nutrition and lifestyle changes, and this is really at the heart of what I do. So we're gonna reduce inflammation by first of all following a whole foods diet. Now, as a nutritionist, I only have one rule for food. Just eat whole foods. What you do with that is your choice. There's no one right answer. I don't have a cookie cutter solution for everybody. You have to figure out what works for you. But my only rule is just to eat whole foods. Number two, you're gonna reduce your toxic load. Things like pesticides are actually known as neurotoxins. They damage our brain. They also damage our gut microbiome. So going organic as much as possible is really helpful. And one thing that you can do is go to the environmental working group, it's ewg.org, and they have a list of the clean 15 and the dirty dozen. The dirty dozen, you may have heard of this. The dirty dozen is the list of the most sprayed crops. The clean 15 are the ones that are not so heavily sprayed, and you don't necessarily need to do organic for those. But for the dirty dozen, absolutely try to buy organic as much as possible. Strawberries are at the top of that list, so are apples. And then you want to keep your blood sugar balanced, and we just talked about that. And then we can also consider doing some key supplements. And there are 3 supplements that I find to be safe and effective for most people. The first one is a very high quality omega-3 fish oil supplement. Omega-3s, as most of you probably know, are so good for the brain. They're called essential fatty acids because our bodies can't manufacture them, but our brains need essential fatty acids, so we have to get them from our diet. Unfortunately, our modern day diet is really lacking. It's very low in omega-3s. The second one is curcumin. So curcumin is the active constituent of turmeric. It's what gives turmeric its bright, beautiful orange yellowish color. And you may think, well, oh, I use turmeric in my cooking all the time. I have it in a tea. But the thing about curcumin in culinary turmeric is that it is not very well absorbed by the body. So there are companies that actually have patented forms of curcumin. It's called optimized curcumin, and it's 200 to 300 times more absorbable by the body than culinary turmeric, than the curcumin in culinary turmeric. So, and in my brochure, I give you a couple of those patented names so you can look those up. And so both omega-3 fish oil and curcumin have been found to be very anti-inflammatory for the brain. And then finally, a high-quality probiotic supplement to feed your microbiome and to improve your brain function. Okay, so I want to introduce you to this idea that I love called the balanced plate. And it's pretty simple. So this is a way to eat that really takes the guesswork out of knowing how to eat well. And again, like my whole foods rule, that's really my only rule, is that you use whole foods and then you can customize it to work for you. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your plate, you're gonna divide it in half, and you're gonna fill that half with leafy greens and above ground vegetables. They can be cooked or they can be raw. And then a quarter of your plate is going to be protein, and that can be wild fish, it can be grass-fed beef, organic, free-range poultry, eggs, it can be plant-based proteins like tofu, lentils, beans. The thing to know about plant-based protein is that it's not as protein-dense in a serving as animal proteins. So if you're gonna have some legumes as your protein, which are also very starchy, you could even consider skipping this extra starch because you want to get more of the lentils and the beans. And then a quarter of your plate is going to be starch, and we're going to go for whole grains. I really love to have root vegetables, winter squash. Those are my preferred starches, but whatever you prefer. And then you're going to go for 2 thumbs of healthy fats. That's not very much, a thumb. You can have more than that. But make sure that you're having healthy fats with all of your meals. Fat is not the enemy. Fat is our friend, especially healthy fats, and our brains are made of fat. We need fat for healthy brains. And avocado is a perfect fat to eat every day. You can eat a whole avocado. You hear it here first. A whole avocado every day. You can do that. It's not gonna make you fat. It's gonna make your body really healthy. Carrots and beets, am I discouraging them? Absolutely not. When you have cooked carrots and beets, they're gonna go into your starch category because when you cook them, you release the sugars. They actually become sweeter. You activate the sugars. If they're raw, they'll go into you can actually have them in the above ground veggies category. Raw beets, raw carrots, they're excellent. The question is, do I recommend peeling everything? Peeling apples, peeling strawberries? If you're eating organic produce, then you don't need to peel it. With root vegetables, you can just scrub it. Strawberries and berries are so tiny, if they're being sprayed with pesticides, that's going beneath the peel. So if you're gonna have strawberries, buy organic strawberries. So here's more food for thought. The ketogenic diet has been clinically shown to improve symptoms in Parkinson's patients. What is the keto diet? You may have heard of it, it's very popular right now. It is a high-fat, moderate protein, very low-carb diet that forces the body to use fat as fuel, as energy, instead of carbs. It puts the body into a metabolic state called ketosis. And in ketosis, the body produces small energy molecules called ketones. The ketones are what's important here. So how does the keto diet improve Parkinson's symptoms? It's all in the ketones, in these little fat molecules. So in Parkinson's, there's a defect in the way that our brain cells make energy. But ketones have been found to be able to bypass that defect, which is really exciting, actually. There was a study in 2005, it was a small clinical study. Patients followed the keto diet for 12 weeks, and they showed to have improved motor function and also improved cognitive function. They also showed reduced daytime sleepiness. And because of limited time, I'm not gonna explain how to do the keto diet. That's something that you can ask me about later. And definitely the keto diet is not appropriate for everybody, so you wanna make sure you check with your doctor first and make sure that you're a candidate. So more food for thought. Intermittent fasting supercharges the brain. And you may have heard of intermittent fasting. It's another thing that's pretty popular right now. So intermittent fasting is voluntarily not eating for a set amount of time. For intermittent fasting to be effective, you want to go for a 14 to 16 hour fast 1 to 2 times per week. This might sound extreme, but it's actually very doable. And if you think about it, this is how our ancestors used to eat all the time because they weren't sitting on the couch having a bunch of snacks, watching a show every night after dinner. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna eat all of your food in an 8 or 10 hour time period, and then you're gonna fast for the remaining 14 to 16 hours. So for example, you can finish eating at 6 p.m., finish eating your dinner at 6 p.m., and then you're gonna wait until 8 a.m. or 10 a.m. the next day to break your fast. I did a 14-hour fast earlier this week. I finished eating at 8 p.m., and then I didn't have breakfast until the next day at 10 a.m. You're not gonna do that every single day, but it actually is pretty doable, and believe me, I love to eat and I love to snack. But I did it. So how does intermittent fasting benefit Parkinson's? How could it? Well, first of all, intermittent fasting reduces inflammation. It also produces those brain-friendly ketones, those small fat molecules that the brain likes to use as energy. It boosts something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's referred to as miracle grow for the brain. It helps the brain to change and adapt. Intermittent fasting also supercharges our mitochondria. You may have heard of mitochondria. What are they? They are the energy powerhouses in our cells. And we know that in Parkinson's, there is mitochondrial dysfunction. Intermittent fasting also benefits the gut microbiome. It also allows our bodies time for detoxification and regeneration. So I've thrown a lot of info at you. I wanted to leave you with my top 5 foods for Parkinson's, but these are really appropriate for absolutely everybody. Wild-caught salmon. Make sure when you're buying fish, you get wild-caught fish. Farmed fish might be yummy, and it's definitely cheaper than wild fish, but it is full of antibiotics, and it's really not a healthy choice. Wild-caught salmon is a very good source of protein. We need protein for Parkinson's. We need protein to keep our bodies strong, to help keep weight on. We also need the complete proteins from animal protein for our mood, for our neurotransmitters. We need the essential amino acids that are very plentiful in animal protein, but not so available in plant protein. Wild-caught salmon also contains those great omega-3 oils. It has vitamin D, and it also has a mineral called selenium, which is a precursor to glutathione. You may have heard of glutathione. Glutathione therapy is actually something that's used in Parkinson's, but glutathione is our body's master antioxidant. It's actually made by the body. As we age, we lose our glutathione, it gets reduced, and also in neurological disorders, we don't have as much glutathione. Fermented vegetables, as I talked about before, because they really feed the gut microbiome. Ginger, this might be surprising. Ginger is so great for Parkinson's patients for so many reasons. First of all, it stimulates appetite. It gets your digestive fire going. Ginger is also anti-inflammatory. It's wonderfully uplifting for the mood. And also, it helps with gut motility, and that's something that we talked about earlier today. It is wonderful for helping with constipation. So I think that ginger is something that everyone could incorporate into their diets. You can make tea with it. I like to put a chunk of fresh ginger into my smoothie with some berries, some bananas, some coconut milk. You can add it to your curries, of course. I also like to add fresh ginger to my salad dressing. Cruciferous vegetables, the whole cabbage family, cauliflower, broccoli, kale, mustard greens, Brussels sprouts. All of these foods have sulfur compounds, which are also precursors to glutathione. So they're going to help our body make more of our master antioxidant, which is going to help heal inflammation and really benefit the brain. And then finally, dark leafy greens, and this is a little bit redundant because a lot of those dark leafy greens are part of the cruciferous family, but dark leafy greens are full of fiber, just as are the cruciferous vegetables, and they're anti-inflammatory, they're high in vitamins A and C, and they're very detoxifying for the body. And they're very easy to just throw into a smoothie, to throw into soups and stews. They're easy to work with in the kitchen. Sorry, the question was, can you give examples of fermented vegetables? There's a brand that you can get at Whole Foods and also down to Earth. It's called Farmhouse Cultures. And they make fermented vegetables that come in these little pouches, and they actually have a vent on them so that the active bacteria inside can live and flourish so that they can get oxygen. So they make fermented beets, which they're my favorite, and they tend to be hard to find at Whole Foods. They don't always carry them. But there's also beet kraut, that's another one. You can make fermented vegetables. You can ferment any kind of vegetable. You could look it up online, look it up on YouTube. We talked about how nutrition is essential for good health. There's no one right answer for how you do that. There's no one right diet for everybody. Inflammation is the root of disease, but we can reduce inflammation through the way that we eat and by really nourishing and protecting and taking care of our gut microbiomes. The gut and the brain are connected. They are always communicating. And that's about it. Again, all of this information is on a flyer that I made for you. So I will pass them out, and please feel free to ask any questions afterwards.